Children of the night, what music they make.
Tear your soul apart.
Here's Johnny. They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yes, you just put the gun to your forehead and pull the trigger.
You left the planet and you only moved the headstone. You only moved the headstone.
It's group 140, terminal 55.
Lieutenant Fuller.
Yeah, Nash, what is it?
A phone company's on the other line, sir. They say they got a trace on this one.
Yeah, let's have it.
He says the calls are coming from number 6 Belmont Street.
For Christ's sakes, Nash, you got it wrong. That's where the calls are going into.
That's where they're coming from, too, sir.
Shit. Jennings?
Jennings?
Alright, welcome back, everybody. This is Rig A. Mortis, and you're listening to With the Dead of the Night podcast. If you haven't picked up on it yet, we are covering the movie Black Christmas from 1974. I know, I hear what you're saying. It's Christmas in April. It's kind of crazy, but you know what? The world's upside down right now, so it actually makes perfect sense. So, Boris, why don't you go ahead and kick them facts?
Boris Lagosa here, folks, kicking off our next film here from With the Dead of the Night podcast. We are reviewing this week Black Christmas, the 1974 cult horror slasher stalker film. This film is directed by Bob Clark, which is a very interesting fact here about Bob Clark. He directed another film we did on our last Diner from Hell Grindhouse series, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Funny fact, he has also directed, I believe, Porky's 1, Porky's 2, and A Christmas Story. So Bob Clark's been around as far as the genres on his directorial skills. Moving on here, the movie stars Olivia Hussey as Jess, Margot Kidder as Barb, Care DeLea as Peter, and John Saxton, Grindhouse legend, as Lieutenant Ken Fuller. The film's budget was $620,000. The box office was $4.1 million, so financially that was a moderate success for this time period. And I will go on more and more in my review, why this movie was an avid critical success. Here we go, folks. Off to review this great film, which has been credited as a great cult stalker film and is considered one of the earlier slasher starter films for the genre. So sit back, grab one of your hidden cherries in the toilet or the closet, and let's begin. And try to avoid any kind of cellophane or plastic. Black Christmas begins with a disoriented man as he is walking toward a sorority house on a cold winter night, as he appears to climb up this house into the attic. Barb, Jess, Phil, and all of the sorority are partying inside and having a good time while the phone rings. Barb is egging this person on. She is played by Margot Kidder. Barb is pretty much an alcoholic, a lush, pretty much drinking in every scene of this film. He is saying stuff like, he's saying obscenities to the women. Barb's egging him on, why don't you go stick your tongue in an electrical socket. I think that's what she said to him. This person that they was calling was referred as the moaner, so obviously this has been a problem before as he's been calling. Unaware to the horrors in which they're going to endure in this film, Barb, continues to egg him on, and he tells her pretty much he was going to kill her before he hangs up. As we get back to the normal functions of this party, Claire, played by Lynn Griffin, has already notified the women that she is to meet her father in the morning to go home for the holidays. Claire gets angered with what Barb does on the phone with, you'll find out later, his name was Billy. She gets angered with Barb and goes upstairs to pack her clothes. Unfortunately, she is the first victim. He is hiding behind the plastic of the wardrobe closet and comes out and attacks Claire, suffocating her with the plastic. Mrs. McHenry, you were introduced to her early in the film. She is the sorority mother. She arrives and tries to figure out what is going on, obviously when she's in the bathroom, looking in the toilet tank for her missing brandy. She's looking for her brandy in closets. This woman's an alcoholic, which I liked Mrs. McHenry's character, as short-lived as it was. Mrs. McHenry meets Claire's father. As he's, looking around, he asks, I believe, Peter, who is Jess's boyfriend. I think that's who he comes in contact with first, asking where Claire has been, because she hasn't met him in the morning. Obviously, this becomes a problem of what happens the night before. Her father's reluctant to do anything at first, because he sees these nude pictures in the college sorority house, and Mrs. McHenry's trying to cover it up, and he's saying to Mrs. McHenry that he didn't send his daughter to college to drink, yada yada yada. But he obliges to give Mrs. McHenry a ride into town, that she can show him around. The women go ahead to try and file a missing persons report, where Barb is flirting and antagonizing the cop when they do the report. She gives him a number, and it has the word fellatio in it as a call name or whatever. Barb actually feels like there was a scene where Barb's really drunk, and Claire's father's sitting in the sorority house. They're in the common rooms downstairs, where Barb believes that you guys are hiding. You're hiding the fact that you're blaming this all on me. And Phil tells Barb to go upstairs. Telling her she's drunk, she needs to go upstairs. Unfortunately, that's where Barb, Barb goes upstairs, goes into her room. Mrs. McHenry is drawn to the attic in one of the scenes of this film. She goes to investigate, but when she goes upstairs, she sees Claire in the attic with the cellophane plastic around her face. Billy is holding a tow hook, which he thwarts at the head of Mrs. McHenry, hanging and killing her. After this, obviously, the whole sorority house is trying to stand banded together, even after the death of Barb comes, when she is murdered by some sort of glass figurine, if you say. Phil was killed off camera. You didn't really see what happens to her. This is when she goes. This was after the whole scene which occurs, where they go to. They find out that there's a fellow college girl who goes missing in the days prior by the name of Janice, which Mr. Harrison and the women go investigate to see if they can find whereabouts of Claire, which they find Jess's remains in a park when they go out to try to find clues of Claire's disappearance. In this film, Jess, played by Olivia Hussey, actually has kind of a side story distracting her from these other events which are occurring, which is she's pregnant, and she goes to her boyfriend to tell him that she's pregnant, and he's like, "Oh, that's great," and she's beside herself if she wants to keep the child or not. And this man's all about starting a family. So you start to get kind of a taste here, thinking that how aggravated he gets with her and how he gets standoffish with the whole pregnancy thing, that maybe he has something to do with these slayings. But after Phil and after Barb's killed, she has it, after Claire has it, after Jess, played by Olivia Hussey, has it out with her boyfriend. Halfway through this film, then you kind of start to realize that what most big horror fans call the, quote, final girl has to be Jess. One thing I will say about this film is the deaths in this film weren't very gory. This wasn't really a gore fest film, and I think what when after Barb gets killed and after Phil gets killed, you realize that this movie wasn't made to be a complete gore fest. I mean, Bob Clark's other work like Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, that wasn't a completely gory movie either, and a film like this doesn't have to be. The horrors which are occurring, you already know what's happening. Bob Clark kind of leaves it to your imagination what happens to Phil. The intensity, though, as far as the what's going on makes you think. Going on, when you really get to the climax of this film and you think you know what happens after the policeman. Jess is in the house. She doesn't know what happens to Phil yet, or Barb, I don't think. Jess gets a phone call on the phone after Graham from the telephone company lets the cops know that the phone calls they are receiving is coming from inside the house. When the policeman calls Jess and notifies her that the calls were coming from the house the whole time, this is when everything is set up for this final last piece of this film. Jess grabs a fire poker, obviously not listening to what the cop's saying. She proceeds to run to the basement. As she's sitting in the basement, she is startled by Peter, who is looking in the basement window. He proceeds to break it. This is when you start thinking that Peter could be the culprit behind this, and obviously, as I'm explaining this final scene, you'll find out. Spoiler alert! Obviously, you should watch this film before you. I mean, Rig and I always state you should watch the films before you watch our reviews on it, but going on, the cops are pulling up to the scene. They hear Jess screaming, so obviously there's a struggle going on in the basement. The cops go in the basement and see Peter lying there dead as she is barely conscious. As she's laying there resting after this all occurs, Lieutenant Fuller is saying he knew Peter was the person behind these heinous killings. While Claire's dad falls into shock, in which they rush him out to the hospital and everybody leaves the house, Jess is still in the house as they show the other rooms, and a policeman standing outside the house with Billy up in the attic window with Claire and Mrs. McHenry as the credits roll. Now, goals, before I turn this over to Rig, I am going to discuss now what I liked and what I disliked about Black Christmas. One thing I will say is Black Christmas, first and foremost, this 1974 version makes the 2006 version look very bad. I liked the 74 version way better. I haven't watched the 2019 version of Black Christmas yet. Yes, they did remake the remake from 2006. The 2006 version was terrible. I thought this version, the 74 version, ultimately was the best. Even though I'm kind of leaving the 2019 one in the dark, I haven't viewed that one yet. But what I always see about remakes and reboots is the originals are usually the best ones, and I enjoy them the most. This was a good Canadian horror film. It was also great because they never truly revealed the identity of Billy. I don't think it ever showed Billy's face in this film, other than his name, obviously, because you hear it from him saying it. The movie made you kind of use your imagination on basically what this person was like. Was he like how crazy? I mean, obviously this person was crazy. He was killing people. The one dislike, and this is Boris's rant here, everybody. First of all, okay, one question comes to mind. If a tragic event like this occurs in a house, why in the blue hell would they let Jess in that house after what all happened? This is my only chief complaint about this film was why would they leave Jess in the house? As you're zooming out of Jess's room at the end of the film, you see bloodstains on the other room on the bed. You see where all these other crime scenes happen. Why would Jess be in the house? Why wouldn't they take her to, a family member or someone else's house to stay, as this house was a crime scene? Ultimately, that was my only chief complaint. Margot Kidder was, a legend in her own right in horror films. May she rest in peace. She passed away a couple years ago. She did a good part as Barb. Olivia Hussey was well known back in the day. She did a good part as Jess. I thought the acting in this film was superb. I mean, this film was not a major blockbuster as far as money, but it was an avid success in its cult following, and it's become more of a cult following over the years. And Bob Clark did a really good job explaining the story of this film, letting the story play out, and not, I liked how it didn't show Billy's face. And like I said, the only chief complaint I had was, why would they let Jess in that house after a crime scene was, multiple crime scenes occurred. Other than that, though, I thought this was a very good film, and now I'll turn it over to Rig. Rig?
All right, before I get into my thoughts, I have a little special announcement to make. On April 20th, me and my wife welcomed our second child into the world. Emerson Liam Turner was born at 11:32 p.m. He's doing good. Had a couple issues. So if you could please keep him in your prayers and your thoughts, would be much appreciated. I love you all very much for that, just in advance. All right, my thoughts on Black Christmas. First thing I thought was, I'll say, this has got to be very early. In 1974, this is pretty early for the POV shot. That made itself pretty popular later on. But like for a slasher film, of course I know there's other ones before that, but the slasher, that whole POV shot had to start. It had to start around that time in the early 70s, I think. So I remember thinking that, and then of course I'm like, man, like sneaking here you have this killer is like sneaking into like a straight up crowded Christmas party. He's either like really ballsy or he knows somebody and he's not really afraid to get caught because he can just play it off as like, hey, they know who I am. So then of course a few minutes later they had the phone call, and the phone call's really fucked up, and but I wasn't thinking too much. I was like, this is kind of like a party slasher, like typical slasher film. And she's got a couple good lines in there when she's just like, and you can't rape a townie, and it's just ridiculous shit like that. And so I was just thinking to myself like, you know what, it's okay. And a couple annoying characters in there. Hopefully they get killed off pretty quick. But then once the girl gets smothered, and they show her, like you see him, like he puts her like almost like a decoration in the window in the attic, and just like he's like rocking back and forth. She's like rocking back and forth, and he's like laughing. I'm like, this movie's good and kind of fucked up. And he's in the fact that it shows, like when it shows her father's like comes in, and he's like worried, and he comes to the sorority house, and he meets the of course the sorority mother, who's like just a drunken goofy ass woman. You can see he's nervous, and then he walks out, and he's just like, I really hope she's okay. And then of course there's like the you see him come out of focus and her into focus as of course she's laying in the chair with a bag over her head and she's dead. And it's just like really dark. I'm like, man, this movie's like kind of fucking dark. I didn't realize how dark this movie was. I thought it was just like a cheesy slasher film, which I love, trust me. But I started to like kind of pick up a little bit. So then it started to like, there's a couple different scenes where, of course she's like, there's the one drunk girl who's always drunk and kind of a bitch. And there's like a scene where she's like feeding some like booze to a little kid. I'm like, this chick kind of sucks. And then it's kind of a little kind of slow. It's back and forth. Like, the father's looking for a daughter, and they're all kind of talking. He's upset because he's finds out his daughter's at some party house. And of course, when they go looking, the old lady's randomly looking for a cat. I'm like, okay, well, this lady's putting a little too much effort in trying to find this cat. She goes up to the attic where the dead girl's at, and of course she gets killed. And I was like, all right, it's definitely the one boyfriend. He's a fucking weirdo. He gets pissed off during one conversation. He completely destroys like a beautiful piano. This guy's definitely off his rocker. So something's definitely going on with him. And if he's not a killer, there's got to be more than one. Because sometimes I feel like he's somewhere else when something's getting done. And then of course the old lady, the sorority mother, she goes up into the attic, and of course gets killed. But after she gets killed, then the movie starts getting like really fucked up. There's like the whole scene in the when they have like the search for the man's daughter, and like randomly you think that they all kind of stop and they're all shocked. The one girl's like lays crying, like the father stops out in the field, and his mouth drops over, and the mother like almost like she turns her head like she's gonna like faint. I'm like, oh fuck, I guess they found the body, but they found like a dead teenage girl. Like, what was the point of that? Was that a distraction? Like, is the boyfriend the killer? Like, I started. I'm like, this is getting kind of out there. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, the killer, is he still in the house? Did he ever leave the house? What kind of police work would you do if someone's missing? What do you think you would search the entire house? Like, including the attic and the basement and everywhere else? Because I feel like no one searched the basement and no one searched the attic. But anyway, that's first. I think that's honestly a lot of times that's where intruders hide. That's where the first place they're going to go. Like, all right, where am I going to go? They're not going to look. If I can't get out the front door or the back door, that's where I'm going to go. So that's probably. I'll definitely want to check the attic and the basement before I left there. But anyway, we're not here to critique police work. We're here to critique horror movies. But maybe that might have been a scene that they kind of fucked up on. But anyway, so yeah, this of course, like this scene, like I really enjoyed this. Like I always enjoy a silent scream. Like the hands on the face, and it's getting ready. To see something. You're about to see something horrific, and sometimes it's almost better when they don't show it. Which they don't show it in this movie. They don't show the dead girl in the field. They kind of just show the mother. He grabs the mother, and she just starts screaming, but you don't hear anything. And that's always been like I've always really enjoyed that in movies. It kind of makes it's more of eerie to me than actually hearing the scream itself. Then just like there's a couple different. And of course, like immediately after that happens, there's a scene in the attic where he's like up there, he's like laughing and like giggling, he's like rocking, and he has like a baby doll in the dead girl's arms, like rocking in her chair, just like giggling, like he's just like having a good. He's just a fucking nut. And I'm like, okay, it's definitely the boyfriend. He's got to be there because he vanished right after that. But then they show him later on, like coming into the house. Like, okay, is he breaking into the house? Is he just randomly showing back up? Has he been in the whole time? Is there an extra person? So then, it kind of goes from there. It's just like he's just he calls all this stuff, and you immediately find out it's like when he talks to his girlfriend on the phone, after he finds out like she's pregnant and she's not gonna keep the baby, he's like kind of panicked, and he calls her and like kind of lets the cat out of the bag. Right, he's not trying to like hide anything anymore. Like he's like trying to pretend. Like it's almost like I'm not sure if he's got like multi-personality disorder, because sometimes he's like extremely angry and like then he turns to a baby, and then like he's trying to like act like he's like multiple different people and changing his voice. The dude's like really fucked up. And then I'm trying to think what some other shit in this movie that I really enjoyed. Yeah, the movie takes a hell of a turn after the old lady dies in the attic. This movie definitely improves by a shit ton. And I always laugh like this. Of course, like the famous detective in that movie. I mean, he's been in so many movies, but I love how it like just a little comedy relief with like the bust the balls of the sergeant, because he's like always fucked up, and he always just the bed. And it's cool to actually see where that like famous scene comes from. You've seen the scene; it's been redone in so many horror movies, which is ridiculous. The whole the call was coming from inside the house. I think like one missed call did it. One missed call. One missed call has been done like 1,000 times. I've seen one version of it, and then I refuse to see the rest because it's of course they change some things or whatever. Or one missed caller, or it's been changed. It's been done in Japan. It's been done everywhere. It's done in Spanish. So, but I'm almost 100% positive it originally started from this movie. Because I think the one missed call was 1980 or something like that, maybe like 79. But it is cool, once you start we start diving deep into these movies, some movies I've never seen before. You start to see where a lot of movies got their inspiration from. And that is one good thing I like about doing this series, and it's been a big joy to me is actually going through and seeing that and finding out where these original ideas came from. And sometimes they're even from something else. Sometimes I've seen movies that are like made in like this era, and they actually were done in like 1930, and they're just being redone again. So it's it's always critiqued. It's always tweaked a certain way, and just to make it their own. But yeah, I really did enjoy this movie. It has a couple of scenes. There's a scene where he's like speaking behind a door. That was a really freaky scene. And when he like he follows into the room and like follows her to the basement, and she was like, kind of, she's trying to hide from him, and he's like walking around like, oh, it's just me. I'm, he has to have known, he definitely knows that he knows that she knows that he killed all her friends, and he's like trying to walk in, like play it off like, I don't know what you're talking about. What's going on? But he just like walks in, like busts in the windows. Like, why would you just bust in the windows trying to get into the house if you're trying to just talk to your girlfriend? And of course, it looks like, I thought he was dead, like he got beat to death, and then at the end, I thought they might have taken it out. But I guess, I mean, at the end of the movie, someone's back in the attic, and because they never find. That's the thing, that the father, he never finds out if his daughter's dead. That he just, I guess, it just assumes the fact that like all these other girls have been slaughtered and his daughter's just missing, and they can't find the old lady. And like, they never show that they went up into the attic. At the end of the movie, someone's up there. So it's like, is that a second person? Did that guy get up? Because you didn't really see him get put into a body bag that I can remember. And so at the end of the movie, it's just like kind of like, it's like kind of like throws you out there. Boris is like, oh, that was him. He snuck away. He didn't see him get put in the bag, so he snuck. He took off. But I'm like, well, the cops found him in her on the floor, so he had to be dead. Unless they would check his pulse or put him in the bag or put him, did something with them. But unless there's like a second person, or was he actually the friend of the girl, the original girl that got killed? Was he part of it? Because he supposedly went away on a skiing trip and never came back or whatever, but he supposedly, that's where he said he was going. But I don't know, you never know. But anyway, this has been my thoughts on the movie. I highly suggest watching if you haven't seen it. I haven't seen 2006 version, and I definitely haven't seen the new version. I didn't really see, there's just a time where you just overplay shit. Like I feel like you can redo something, and but honestly, the majority of the redos, like if they can kind of tweak it a certain way and change it to make it their own, it's either like go exactly how it was, but if you're going to do it, make it darker. That's kind of my thought process. If you're going to redo a movie, either go by the book. Because if the movie is good enough to be redone, then it made it smart. So they might as well just go by the same thing and just change the actors or whatever. And of course, like it's made a little bit modernized. That's okay. We understand we gotta change the times. But if not, like don't, like I've seen some movies where it's like they like almost like more cheesy. Like don't make like like if you're gonna redo a movie, an already dark movie, make it darker. Like, make it really fucked up. Like, show some shit that you thought should have been in the original one. Or show some scenes that, like, like maybe they couldn't show back then. Might have been a little too much, too risque or too crazy back then. And do it now. Because, I mean, it's so crazy to me because, like, this world is everyone's so sensitive. But at the same time, we want to see more violent shit. It's like, I don't know. It's just like it, contradict itself, and everyone's like, oh no, you can't say this, you can't say that, but you know what, go ahead, kill all of them, no, cave all their skull. I want to see them get their skulls caved in, then get pissed on. That's what we really want to see, but you better not call them a certain name. And I don't know, it's just a fucked up way of thinking these days. But like, yeah, but really, I mean, like so I mean the remake, like Pet Sematary was great. It didn't need to be remade. It was redone, but it was, and they kind of did their own little. They kind of switched things a little bit. And I thought it was a little bit darker, but having not really too much darker. But it was kind of cool to have the scene in the movie where instead of like killing Gage, they killed the daughter, and which kind of gives her, she's a little more dialogue because she can speak and she's not a 2-year-old. So that was kind of, how they did that was kind of cool. But then, of course, it just shit the bed and it just did all this other bullshit and change, I don't know. But I have no desire to watch the remake. I might be a hater. It might be actually be excellent. And I'm just, just not giving it a chance. Maybe I should. Maybe you will. We'll never know. Maybe we'll actually watch it when it's actually Christmas time. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble on, so I'm going to go ahead and end this podcast. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Reggae Mortis, and you have been listening to With the Dead Night Podcast. We'll see you guys soon. Later.